When Steve Angelli transferred from Notre Dame to Syracuse, we all assumed that's their starting quarterback. Not so fast, my friends.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Syracuse, to me, is one of the more interesting teams to cover, Kenton Gibbs, because everyone assumes they're going to have a really bad season because of their schedule primarily, yet everyone's really high on Fran Brown and the direction of the program. They just think they're going to be really bad this year, but they're still really high on the coach.
Absolutely. It's hard to not be. I mean, I was on TikTok the other day and saw a Fran Brown quote jump off because the guy was running his college football 26 dynasty, and he said, yeah, one of my slot receivers asked me for $2 million. That's a little bro over at Ohio State. I said, oh my God, Fran Brown talk has arrived, ladies and gentlemen. He is here on the national scene.
Well, he is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this episode, we'll talk about the best value if you're going to bet on a team to win the ACC this year. Spoiler alert, the best value is not Clemson. Emphasis on the word value. We'll talk about the season outlook for the Syracuse Orange, but updates on their training camp is we're joined by host of Locked On Syracuse, Jackson Holzer. So Jackson, right off the top, like I mentioned, hey, Steve Angelli, he might win the job, but he's not definitely going to be Syracuse's starter this year. What's the latest on the competition between Angeli and Rickie Collins?
The latest is that this is a true quarterback competition. How about that? And that I think the public perception from the outside, maybe not necessarily from people inside Syracuse, is that, hey, Steve Angelli, he's coming over from Notre Dame. You don't leave Notre Dame to go sit on the bench at a school like Syracuse. With all due respect to Syracuse, you're leaving Notre Dame to go to Syracuse. You figure you got to be the starter there, especially with the experience that he does have, starting a bowl game, filling in for a drive in the college football playoff, filling in well, I might add, in that college football playoff. But they like Rickie Collins too. Rickie Collins is a transfer from LSU. He wasn't going to play at LSU this year because Garrett Nussmeier is still there. And similar sentiment with Steve Angelli, right? You're not transferring from Notre Dame to go to Syracuse just to sit on the bench, right? You want an opportunity to start. Same thing with Rickie Collins. He's coming over from LSU. You think he wants to sit on the bench either? Probably not. So this is a true quarterback competition here. The coaching staff has said basically that they love the fact that Steve Angelli has got that experience behind him, right? Mentioned the bowl game. Mentioned the fact that he also had that cameo appearance in the college football playoff. But also they think Rickie Collins is really talented. He can be a dual threat quarterback for Syracuse football, which would be different from what they had last season with Kyle McCord. So that's the latest. It's a true quarterback competition. They're going to have a scrimmage pretty soon on the Hill. So we'll see what happens from the scrimmage. I don't know exactly when they're going to officially come out and name a starter. I still think we're at least a week or two away before that happens.
So you talk about Rickie Collins potentially being a change from your quarterback last year, Kyle McCord, but this offense is seeing a ton of changes from what it was last year in terms of, you know, a lot of very productive guys who've either gone on to the NFL or gone on to Penn State in the situation of Trevor Pena. What do you look at as kind of the North Star for this offense to say, hey, this is the thing that this offense will be able to hang their hat on under Fran Brown in year two?
I think they're still going to be good at wide receiver. Last season, they had Jackson Meeks, they had Trevor Pena, they had Arondé Gadsden at tight end, and LaQuint Allen was one of the best pass-catching running backs in college football. All four of those guys, excellent players, and it's going to be tough to replace them. But if you look at Syracuse, I think they're pretty deep still, despite not having any of those guys returning. You got a guy in Darrell Gill who's entering his third season of college football, who last year took a big step forward in development and actually led the ACC in yards per catch. So he could stretch the field. They brought in Jonte Cook, who, yeah, I understand he hasn't quite lived up to his potential just yet, but hey, This is a fresh start, a fresh opportunity for him. I think he's going to slot in right there where Trevor Pena was supposed to be. And I'm not sure if they actually go out and get Jonte Cook had they kept Trevor Pena. I love Trevor Pena. We'll see if Jonte Cook makes us thinking by midseason, who's he, right? Because Jonte Cook, it's on the table. He has a massive season given the fact that he was a 5-star recruit as recent as 2023. So he's got a lot of potential there. And then the other guy kind of overshadowed a bit, but we had high expectations for him last year as Syracuse fans, Justice Ross Simmons. He's a transfer from Colorado State heading into last year. Thought he was going to be a top 2 wide receiver on the team, but unfortunately, he dealt with a nagging hamstring injury towards the end of fall camp. It bled into the start of the regular season, and by the time he got healthy and was seemingly ready to go and ready to take on a bigger role, too many guys had already taken an opportunity from him. You already saw Jackson Meeks emerge. Darryl Gill was already kind of that depth piece for Syracuse that they needed. Oronde Gadsden stayed healthy. Trevor Pena stayed healthy for the most part. Quinn Allen stayed healthy for the most part. There was just not enough opportunity for Justice Ross Simmons to get on the field when he was healthy. Well, now he's healthy. And he's got that fresh opportunity to be a top wide receiver on this team. So if they get good quarterback play, you got the talent around the quarterback at the receiver position. That's something that you can hang your hat on.
Well, so far in training camp, as we're joined by Jackson Holzer of Locked On Syracuse, what's the buzz been, I should say, on the defensive side of the football?
Good question, because Syracuse is known more as an offensive team. Look, let's face it with their defense. They got to improve in pretty much every single aspect. You look at the stat sheet last year, it's not impressive. I pointed this out on the podcast. There was not one area really where they were good at on defense. There were some where they were kind of mediocre relative to the ACC, where you're not terrible, but there's nowhere where they're like, oh yeah, you're top 5 in sacks or you're a top 5 run defense. So the emphasis this year has got to be improvement across the board. And Fran Brown is having players wear shirts from some of the couple of key plays from last season that really went against them. There were a lot of key plays that went in their favor, but the reason why last year Syracuse didn't have that Indiana type season where, you take advantage of the schedule you're given and you go 11-1 and you take that to the college football playoff is because 4th and 9 against Stanford. You didn't get that stop when you needed to get that stop. 4th and 1 against Boston College. You didn't get that stop when you really needed that stop. So that is the emphasis, which is now you got to make the big play when the big play is there.
So you talk about making the big play when the big play is there. Who are going to be the big play guys this year for Syracuse? Because let's be honest about it. It's never about your X's and O's. It's your Larrys and Joes. You talk about the 4th and 9. You had a corner one-on-one with Alec Ayamanor. I don't think that was a great idea. But
Kenton, don't get me started on that play. They rushed 3. They dropped 8. Hold on a second here. They rushed 3. And look, the coaching staff has already talked about this play long enough. So, they've admitted it was a complete mistake. But, come on. You rush 3, you drop 8. And yet their best wide receiver who's going to the National Football League is still left one-on-one. What's the point of rushing 3 and dropping 8 at that point?
But that's what I mean in terms of your big-time playmakers. You're going to need some players to make big-time plays. Who do you expect those players to be this year on offense and defense where you say, this guy is going to be one of those guys that we look at and we say, if Syracuse is to exceed expectations with a brutal schedule, this guy's going to have to make some big-time plays?
Well, how about the fact that Syracuse is putting a lot of trust in someone who is 17 years old? Demetrius Samuel Jr., a consensus 4-star recruit, 2-way player, by the way.
Yeah.
He's a corner. He might be the team's number 1 corner this year. And he's also going to get reps at wide receiver. They're going to use him, I think, in a similar way to Travis Hunter. I'm not going to sit here and say he's Travis Hunter 2.0 and all that stuff. Don't, please, okay. But they're putting a lot of faith in him. 17 years old. Now, we've seen 17-year-olds in college football do quite well. Ryan Williams last year over at Alabama. It can be done. But Demetrius Samuel Jr., number 1 corner for Syracuse, and his first test, it's not going to be against Popcorn State, right?
Tennessee.
Oh,
Rocky Top.
All right. Here we go. So how good is he going to be as a true freshman, 17 years old? I got high hopes for him, at least long term. I'm very curious to see what he's got short term. And also, you got Chris Peel, a transfer from Georgia in the defensive back room as well, competing with Davian Kerr, I think, for that second cornerback spot. I think both have a ton of potential. We just haven't seen enough from either of them just yet. Davian Kerr did start the final 4 games for Syracuse over at corner, so they like him at least enough to start him at the end of last year. But we'll see what happens. Syracuse does have a decent track record, at least over the past season and now a fall camp, of getting guys from Georgia and having them exceed.
Well, we mentioned Tennessee is the opener, and the schedule doesn't really get any easier after that. Let's take a look at the Syracuse season outlook. When we come back, we got Jackson Holzer from Locked On Syracuse with us, Kenton Gibbs and Alex Donno. You guys want to keep it locked. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Do you ever wish that managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Guys, when I started using Monarch, I was amazed and a little surprised as to how easy it made everything. Instead of having to log on to like a dozen different apps to check all my finances and my spending and my credit card accounts, it puts it all there right on Front Street for you. And it helped me realize how much I was paying and overpaying for things like food delivery and streaming services. So I'd like you, as I did, to take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On Syracuse. There's a lot going on there this offseason, including a quarterback competition. Jackson Holzer is going to keep you updated, available free wherever you get your podcasts and free on YouTube. All right, so Jackson, beyond Tennessee, what are the other, in your mind, like the 2 or 3 other toughest games on Syracuse's schedule this season?
How about at Clemson, at Notre Dame? How about that? Or would you like to do at SMU, at Miami? How about Georgia Tech on the road?
You have any home games this year? Sheesh.
No, actually, it's really unfortunate for Syracuse fans. They're closing the JMA Wireless Dome this year. They're also, all the fields are gone. Like, they were just wiped away, clean. So Syracuse is going to play 0 home games. They're just not going to be in Syracuse this year. They're going all on the road, 12 games.
Lord have mercy. That is a tough, when parents talk about we went uphill both ways in 12 feet of snow. That's what this Syracuse schedule is looking like. So let me ask you this. You look at this, everybody's talking about how tough the schedule is and all that type of stuff. What is a game or two in there where you say to yourself, Syracuse can steal this one. This is one where you're going to be a dog, but I could see this one turning out in Syracuse's favor. What are the game or two or a few games that you look at and say, that's more pliable than what Vegas and the fans might think right now?
I would say any game as of right now that is not at Clemson or at Notre Dame. Because, look, I'm not going to sit here and say Syracuse is going to go into Miami and win, or into SMU and win, or anything like that, or they're going to beat Tennessee in week 1, right? I mean, but at the end of the day, they have a tough schedule, and we know this.
Mm-hmm.
You can also make it tough on the opponent as well. Here's the thing with Syracuse. You're also allowed to be good. So if you're a good team, you're allowed to beat other good teams. I want to see how good this Syracuse team is, because it's a different roster than last year. They kept the big 3 coaches, but the personnel for the most part is much different. They got a couple of players on offense and defense who are the same as last year. You got Deuce Chestnut back there. You got Devin Grant back there. Daryl Gill is back, but even Daryl Gill is going to take a bigger role this season. Yassine Willis and Will Nixon at running back. They're back, but going to have a bigger role this upcoming season. The offensive line's brand new. Defensive line's got a couple of holdovers, but also some new pieces there as well. It's a brand new Syracuse football roster. They have a tough schedule, but Syracuse is also allowed to be a good team as well. And when you're a good team, you're going to beat other good teams. I think the big test for them is truly in week 1 against Tennessee. Because when I look at Tennessee this season, I view them in the SEC as a pretty good team in that conference, but they're not overwhelming, at least on paper, in my opinion, relative to the rest of the SEC. It's not like we're sitting here saying, hey, Syracuse is opening the season against Georgia. They're opening up against Alabama. They're going to lose by 30 or 40 points, whether we like it or not. Right. Vegas is already giving them a puncher's chance to beat Tennessee. I believe if you check FanDuel, they're about a 2-touchdown underdog to them. They got their own quarterback situation that they got to deal with as well. Tennessee probably should win that game, but hey, who knows, right? It's week 1. Weird stuff can happen in week 1 especially. So, hey, if Syracuse is a good team, you can beat Tennessee in a neutral site. And if you can beat Tennessee in a neutral site, there are plenty of teams also on that schedule you can beat as well. The 2 toughest ones at Clemson, at Notre Dame.
Is there a bar you set in terms of number of wins where you go over that or at that, it's a successful season, under that, it's unsuccessful?
Great question, because Fran Brown would tell you that it's undefeated and win the national title. And that's what I think everyone in Syracuse would say as well. Now, I'm not on the coaching staff. I don't play for the team. I don't manage the team either. So I'm going to have my own opinion on them, what is a successful season or not. Make a bowl. Like, I don't care how tough the schedule is. You want to continue the momentum that this program built from last season? Find a way to win 6 games. You're a good program, right? You want to be a good program. You want to take that next step. We all acknowledge that the schedule was tougher than last year. People would be understanding if you don't replicate 9-3 again. We understand. We get it. Go 6-6 at minimum. Go make a bowl game. If you don't make a bowl game, you better have a pretty damn good excuse as to why you didn't make the bowl game.
So I know that we're talking season outlook, but let's go beyond the season for just a second here, okay? Because Fran Brown, rising star, getting 5-star commits to come to Syracuse, highest ranked commits since you and I were in diapers, Jackson. That's how long it's been since Syracuse has landed that type of player. Let's say Fran Brown does go 9-3 again. Let's say, even with this gauntlet of a schedule, he pops out on the back end. I got washed up for every game afterwards except 2. Right? What do you think the odds are that he stays at Syracuse at that point? Do you still see that as like a, hey, he's home, he's here, he meant it? Or is that much more of a 10 million reasons is a lot of reasons to leave home again, per se?
He's never given an indication that he's taking Syracuse just to go leave for somewhere else. So I have to kind of take him for, like, I have to trust his word on it. Honestly, if that's a good problem to have. If you're a really good team again this year with a tough schedule and a brand new roster, and you still churn out a similar result to the year you had before, that's incredible. At that point, if you're Syracuse, here's what you got to do, especially when you look at the recruiting classes in the pipeline. Top 25 class in the country coming in 2026. You don't want that to disappear. You got to give the guy a blank check. You got to be willing to match any offer that's out there. Because one thing that I have told Syracuse fans consistently is that if the good problem emerges, which is that they have another big year, teams are going to call. It's inevitable. Big or perceived bigger programs are going to call. The example that I give all the time is, Billy Napier over at the University of Florida is on the hot seat. If Florida doesn't win this year, he's done, because they were going to fire him at the end of last year, but they kind of got hot towards the end and they said, you know what? All that money we raised to fire him, well, we're actually going to put that into the recruiting aspect now. So we're just going to make the roster better, and we're going to give Billy Napier one more year. Well, you know what, Billy Napier? If you don't do a good job at the University of Florida, you're done. It's over for him. University of Florida is a pretty nice head coaching gig. You don't think they would be interested in a guy like Fran Brown coming off back-to-back 9-win regular seasons at Syracuse?
And he's already recruiting 5-star players in the state of Florida, too.
He's he's got an SEC background, given the fact that he was at Georgia before he was at Syracuse. He can recruit pretty much anywhere you want him to recruit in the country. You want him to go in the Northeast and get kids from Pennsylvania? He can do that. Or get maybe the top players from New York to come play. He can do that. You want him to recruit in Florida with all the resources that he's got? I'm sorry, Donno. If Fran Brown were to go to Fran Brown, if he goes to the University of Florida, he's going to out-recruit Miami. Period. End of story. Like you're kind of, that's going to be tough.
It
would
be
more competitive. I don't honestly, and I say this.
He would. I don't think with those resources, honestly, he's out recruiting Miami all day.
Hey, Donno.
Nobody works harder than Fran Brown.
Hold on. If anybody other than Mario Cristobal was at Miami, I would say yes. But I think it would be a fight. It would be a slugfest.
Donno, you're my permanent co-host. I want to rock with you. I can't imagine. With all due respect to Cristobal, we've seen him born on third base twice. At Oregon and Miami, two places that historically they're bad recruiting classes.
We're talking
Most
about
schools in the ACC would pray for.
Talking about recruiting.
That's what I'm saying. In terms of recruiting, Oregon's bad year, Miami's bad year. Most schools in the ACC would pray and beg for Oregon and Miami's bad year. Syracuse, their bad year, every team would cry, pee on themselves, and throw up if they saw that recruiting class come in. Like,
did you see what it was like before Fran Brown? They're sitting here bottom of the ACC every year.
I think it would be.
They got a top 25 class coming in. If the guy comes to the University of Florida, he's out recruiting everyone.
That's what I'm saying. I think it could be competitive on a good Cristobal year, but I think year for year on average, I think Fran will cook him. That's just what I've seen.
Listen, I'm sorry. I will concede to the point where like Fran Brown at Florida would get me nervous. Like Miami wouldn't be winning battles the same way that they win battles against Florida and Florida State. Like that would make me nervous. Like I've always said the same thing about if Deion Sanders were to ever actually go back to his alma mater at Florida State. That would concern me. Fran Brown at Florida would concern me, but I would trust Cristobal to win a lot of those battles because he can close.
Miami's always going to get their. Miami's not. I'm not going to sit here and say Miami's never going to get a player. Like they're going to win battles. I'm just saying that year in and year out, Florida would out recruit Miami with Fran Brown. But back to Syracuse, you just got to match whatever any team is willing to give, right? You got to open up the checkbook and say, hey, you know what? What's the number? What's it going to take? And if he truly wants to say, he'll say a number. Syracuse will hopefully be able to give it to him, and they give it to him, and we never have to talk about Fran Brown leaving. That's that. Yeah. Again, good problem to have if you're in that situation, because that means your program is heading in the right direction. You just want to make sure that you're no longer you're no longer that stepping stone anymore, right? You're not taking the Syracuse job to then take a Florida job. You're taking the Syracuse job, and we're going to pay you to continue to be the Syracuse coach so that, hey, 2 9-win seasons maybe in a row. Year 3, we're looking at college football playoff expectations. That's where you want to get to, and you want to keep building and building from there.
Well, we appreciate the time, even though he's, raising these blasphemous claims about Fran Brown recruiting at Florida. Jackson Holzer.
Blasphemous. You got Kenton agreeing with me. That's kind of a
That
is bizarre. This is history in the making. That's never happened before. Well, quite an appearance then from Jackson Holzer. Check him out at Locked On Syracuse. Thank you so much, Jackson.
Thank you so much. Anytime.
Yeah, I think that is the first time that you and Jackson have ever publicly agreed on anything with all those squad episodes. So
yeah, I mean, he's a Kit Kat type of guy too. We're just different types of guys, me and Jackson. Yeah. I hate Kit Kats and everything in me, but that's neither here nor there. It is always a great time having Jackson on.
Well, here's something I think Kenton and I will agree on in terms of best value to win the ACC this coming season. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Oh, I need that pick me up, my friends. The one that I get from 5 Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest. Some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. I've told you guys before that, growing up, I used to play a lot of golf with my late grandfather who played into his 80s. And when he was in his 70s and 80s, used to play circles around me. I wish back then I had 5-hour energy to keep up with him. And folks, golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your first order. This offer only valid until September 30th on one order, cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. For your next listen, make sure you check out the portal. Brian Smith does a fantastic job taking you guys through all things NIL, transfer portal, recruiting. It's available free wherever you get your podcast and available free on YouTube. All right, so Kent, looking at the betting odds for ACC champion this year, Clemson is such an overwhelming favorite that, unless you're maybe a Clemson fan, you feel very, very confident that nothing can stand in your way to win the conference. I don't see a whole lot of value at Clemson minus 110 to win the ACC. Miami at plus 400, I guess decent value. But I think when you get into the sweet spot, KG, you start to get to these teams that are sort of in the middle of those favorites lists. Louisville at plus 750, which means you'd get $750 back on a $100 bet if they won the ACC. SMU at plus 850. And how about this one, Kenton? I know you're not a betting man, but you're going to be running to FanDuel.com in about 5 seconds. You can get plus 1,200 odds on Georgia Tech. You can turn $100 into $1,200 if they win the ACC.
That's a good one. That's some good value right there, because you're looking at returning your starting quarterback. You're looking at returning your starting running back. You're looking at returning a good amount of your defense as well. And a defense that took Georgia to 8, overtimes there. A team that showed when Haynes King was healthy, there were times where it was like, what do you do with this team? How do you stop them? And you're telling me that team is plus 1,200? Donno, you may get a call from me at 12:30 at night. Come on, I've got the best beat, Donno. I've got one for you, because that's the type of value right there that could get anybody off the sidelines and into the game in terms of betting. And also Louisville, another team that, they say two things travel everywhere in any type of weather: run game and defense. Now, their defense obviously lost some key pieces and whatnot, but that running game is going to be explosive. It was explosive last year. I'm not expecting a drop-off this year. And you bring in a Miller Moss as well, which, let's be very honest, I have been here all along, and when I give Louisville their lashings for having to start Tyler Shuck, I'm also going to give them love for starting a quarterback that I think is immensely better than Tyler Shuck in terms of a Miller Moss. So I think that is a group. And then Chris Bell out wide as well. That is a group that is going to be able to put up a lot of points. The defense, be opportunistic, and you'll figure it out from there. I think that this is honestly a great setup for them in terms of value.
Now, I'll tell you the other one that I think there's value in. And again, I'm not telling you they're going to win the conference. I'm telling you that your odds are pretty good based on how good I think this team is going to be. And that's Duke. Duke at plus 3,500. And you know what's interesting about Duke is they are behind Florida State at plus 2,500, who I feel is probably a little overvalued. And they're behind North Carolina at plus 3,000. You can get Duke at plus 3,500. I think Duke's going to be better than both of those teams I previously mentioned.
Let me tell you something, Donno. Or actually, let me not tell you, because I know you're smart in this, but the Locked On ACC listeners out there, if you plan on putting $100 on Florida State or the University of North Carolina to win the ACC this year, I have a better thought for you, okay? Send it to me. Send my Cash App is $just Gibbs. At least you'll be paying for me to get a steak the size of my back or something. It'll go somewhere besides to a billionaire betting site
Right.
that, you know, they're not going to miss that money. Okay. Go to charity. Go give it away to the Boys and Girls Club of America, something like that. Do something generous with that money.
Yeah.
Don't just throw it at FanDuel. Don't do that. There are many better ways to use your money. Now, Duke, on the other hand, that team, that is some exquisite value. That is, because people believe that they upgraded at quarterback. Yes, you do see a drop off in terms of your skill positions around your quarterback, but you upgraded at quarterback. You have a defense that you know is going to be excellent under Manny Diaz. And Manny Diaz seems to have figured out that head coaching thing this time around, doesn't he?
Yeah, I
He
agree.
seems to have it rolling at a higher clip with a fairly pliable schedule. Duke does not have a world beater schedule to where you're like, oh man, I see a bunch of games that you look at them and you know they're done. I mean, Elon, Illinois, Tulane, NC State, Syracuse, Cal. That's how they start the season off. You know what I mean? And then you end it with Georgia Tech and Clemson as your first two games in that back half of the second half of the season. But you got UConn, Virginia, UNC, and then Wake Forest. I could see a 10-win season out of that. And going 6-2 in conference, that there's a world where you get there. And if you get there, that's pretty much all you need to do, because with all due respect to even a Clemson, there is not a team in this conference that's more than 2 or 3 bad plays away from losing to Duke. There isn't.
Right.
There isn't.
Right.
So, you know, I think that that's a great value for where they're at.
Yeah, no, I think that's really well said. And heck, I mean, they won 9 games last year. Just to say that they could win 10 this year, it's not a crazy thought whatsoever. He is Kenton Gibbs. Make sure you check him out on X at TGIF_Kenton and at Locked On Wolfpack. Check me out at Alex Donno and on Locked On Canes. And we'll talk to everyone next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.